30 million years after the disappearance of the dinosaurs, the largest land mammal of all time ruled over Asia. In the early 1990s, the French paleontologist Jean Loup Welcomme set out on an incredible adventure to try and pick up the trail of this colossal creature. The first signs indicating the existence of a lost giant came to light in 1910 during an expedition by the English paleontologist Clive Forster Cooper. Exploring in Baluchistan, a remote province west of Pakistan, Forster Cooper came across a hidden valley known as Lundo, where he discovered bones of an extraordinary size. These bones suggested that a mammal as big as a dinosaur might once have roamed the earth. Forster Cooper identified the remains as belonging to a giant hornless rhinoceros, which he named Baluchitherium, or the beast of Baluchistan. He took an impressive array of fossil samples back to Britain, but the creature was doomed to remain an enigma. The Indian War of Independence made it impossible for foreigners to visit the region, and no further expeditions were carried out. Now, almost a century later, Jean Loup Welcomme arrives in this arid and mountainous country and tries to pick up the thread of the story. Above all, he hopes to find the site of Forster Cooper's original excavations, which lies in the territory of the Bugti tribe, one of a number of Baluchi ethnic groups. The province is prey to continual tribal fighting. In 1993, Welcomme managed to make contact with the powerful head of the Bugti tribe. After many long years of negotiation, he finally becomes the first foreigner authorized to enter tribal lands. He studied local language and customs and follows the tribe's strict code of honor to the letter. He's rewarded by an invitation from Nawab, the Bugti chief, to a grand council meeting of all the clan chiefs. It is a great honor.
Giant Baluchitherium, a young one.
Welcomme presents to the chiefs one of the finest fossils discovered so far, part of the jawbone from a young Baluchitherium.
You see here the third molar in eruption, so it's a young male.
His expedition into these dangerous lands is now awarded the protection of the Bugti tribesmen.
I could pass to the people that can touch and have a look on it.
The next day, the team sets off. Keha is head of the team of guards entrusted with the expedition's security. For years, Welcomme has been trying to determine the location of the lost Lundo Valley from the vague indications left by Forster Cooper. The first clue came in 1997 with the discovery of a Baluchitherium finger, and he believes he may now finally have found the famous site. He is determined that during this expedition he will succeed in reconstructing a complete skeleton and finally show what the great Baluchitherium was really like. Before reaching the site, the expedition camps out overnight.
हमें कनाडा को अंगना के हमें एक के अमेरिका पैदा भी था दो ही बलूचिस्तान नंबर बलूचिस्तान भी था हमें सरदार दीदरा का
A certain touching complicity now unites the explorer and the warriors who have adopted him.
Hathi? Hathi, alu? Nee. Jek, kalper. Lelo katam.
Nee, brach. Brach.
Hathi. Hathi? Alu? Bala? Nee, ik doe het in chat. Pan?
These hills seem to have been long deserted by living creatures, but they still hold the memory of the lost giant. It's hard to imagine that this stony landscape was once covered in dense forest, able to supply the ton of vegetation a Baluchitherium would eat each day. So the team of scientists set to work collecting the fossils of the Lundo Valley. Welcomme is assisted by two mammal specialists from Montpellier University, Grégoire Mété and Laurent Marivaux. But for the moment, they do not even need to dig. Dozens of fossils are simply lying scattered on the ground. The scientists can already start matching bones and try to piece together parts of the skeleton.
What's happening here? We're in a somewhat limited area, which is maybe 200 by 200 meters, with a real field of bone fragments. And in this field, we can find bones from several individual creatures. We can count the remains of about 20 Baluchitherium specimens. There are males and females. And the question is, how did all these bones end up here, grouped together but dislocated? Because we haven't found any pieces joined. As with the example of African rivers today, we can imagine there was a great river here, perhaps in flood, with the animals crossing it, and they were swept away in the current and drowned, and drifted in the current down to a river bend where the flow was weaker. And obviously, there they were prey to crocodiles. That's why we find traces of crocodile teeth among the bones. So they were drowned in the mud at a point on the river where the current was weaker and mud built up. And so that's how they were preserved. But unfortunately, the bones are dislocated.
Baluchitherium owes its strange destiny to continental drift. 100 million years ago, when the supercontinent of Gondwana, made up of all the land masses from the south, split up, the Indian plate drifted north across the Indian Ocean. 55 million years ago, it hit the Asian plate. 43 million years ago, contact was complete, and the Indian plate slid under the Asian landmass. This movement caused splits and folds which were to lead to the formation of the Himalayas. At the foot of these mountain chains, a fertile floodplain was formed. 35 million years ago, Baluchitherium appeared and prospered in lush tropical vegetation. Now, all that remains is a vast desert of stone.
Non, ça c'est... Non, c'est un numérique. Ça va là.
Je vais voir, il faut absolument... Mais...
Very often, when we've been camping for a while with the local peoples, what happens is that we're with Kahar, who explains exactly what we're interested in, the pieces that we're looking for. They see the bones and talk among themselves, little by little, from one camp to another. They bring pieces back to our camp, or take us to various places. And then sometimes we get a surprise. Sometimes a nice surprise, but that's rare. Which means that a bone supposed to be a meter long turns out to be only 10 centimeters, which happened to us yesterday and happens quite a lot. But sometimes they brought us here, for example. It was a shepherd who brought us here for the first time. So each time it's a gamble, but if we don't gamble, we never win. That's the nature of the game.
Alors, est-ce que c'est la branche montante, un morceau de la branche montante? Attention, c'est cassé.
But then, of course, finding the fossilized bones is only part of the story.
Avec ça, qu'est-ce que c'est que ce...
Afterwards, it's a case of trying to work out what part of the animal's body the bits belong to.
Ah ben non, c'est en deux, carrément. Là, c'est en deux.
And in some cases, the scientists are hard put to it to work out even what animal the bits belong
Ah oui,
to.
c'est joli, on a la mesure de la dent.
Is this part of a Baluchitherium or
Ça
not?
viendrait là,
And if so, how would this bone fit in with the rest?
comme ça.
For the moment, no one is quite sure. They will obviously have to study the finds closely before they can begin piecing the puzzle together.
Non, de grandes tortues. Bon, on verra l'analyse. Allez, hop. Ah non, c'est pas possible. Non. Oh, on va pas les laisser quand même. Ah, ça c'est dur, hein. Allez, on y va.
The problem is that in order to carry out this analysis, the bones will all have to be transported back to base camp, which is not necessarily as easy as all that, given how many there are. Fortunately, the Bukti guards don't seem to mind lending a hand.
We're at the stage of taking initial samples, after the prospecting has been done. But with an excavation, I'm sure this would turn out to be an exceptional find, really fabulous. Because you never usually find this many bones simply lying on the surface. So if an excavation is done, and it would be good if it is, there are probably whole skeletons, which may be connected or maybe not, which are there, waiting for us underneath. For the moment, the survey reveals huge numbers of bones, huge numbers. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, only the beginning.
Fossilization is a miracle. When animals die on the ground in the forest, they have no chance of being fossilized. Absolutely none. If, by good fortune, they are drowned, it's not fortunate for them, of course, but if by chance they are drowned in a river and very rapidly buried in sediment, then they have a chance of being preserved. If they are preserved quite quickly in mud and sediment and in channels such as this, in chalky, clayey soil, then they are protected from the sun, from scavengers, from bacteria, and gradually minerals dissolved by rainfall, by water, percolate through the sand and are fixed in the bones, which are porous, and which then very gradually start to transform, and they become, of course, much more solid.
While the scientists work, their accompanying guards occupy themselves as well they might. One blackens his lids with coal. When night sets in, all the members of the expedition return to camp. Conditions are basic, and the scientists are supplied with food by local tribesmen, who bring what's needed up to the camp every 3 days. The evening at least brings a reprieve from the oppressive heat of daytime. Then it's just a question of finding a way to pass the time.
Pas possible d'avoir une idée définitive de l'âge de la ou des faunes de Bouti.
It's a stupid game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Come on.
The following day, the scientists start to carry out some preliminary excavations in the rock face lying next to the area where the Baluchitherium bones were discovered. Some fossils, which are easily identified, make it possible to deduce at what times the different layers of sediment were deposed. In this way, it's been possible to establish that all the Baluchitherium fossils lie sandwiched between a layer of marine sediment 40 million years old and what is known as the mastodon layer, 20 million years old.
Voilà, à la main, doucement. Voilà, c'est un os complet.
Welcomme extracts a whole carpus bone from the wall of the cliff. Dating gradually becomes more precise. The indications are that Baluchitheria lived for 11 million years, from 35 to 24 million years ago. But what then happened 24 million years ago to make the creature extinct? The tectonic movements which first created an environment in which the Baluchitherium could evolve also, in the end, led to its extinction. 22 million years ago, as Africa and Eurasia moved together, the flow of water in the Thais, the primeval sea, was modified. The climate became drier. The tropical forest gradually turned into savanna, and there was no longer sufficient vegetation to sustain animals which needed to eat so much. The reign of the largest land mammals came to an end. They left no descendants. The fossils, which are now brought to light after millions of years, are made fragile by contact with the air and by changes in temperature. As a precaution, the fossils are protected with plaster. Fortunately, the process of making the casts is now a lot easier than it was in Forster Cooper's day.
Et voilà le bébé. Prends-le par les deux.
The fossils are carefully levered out of the rock.
Okay.
As the days pass, the scientists manage to put together more and more pieces of the puzzle. For Jean Loup Welcomme, this is the culmination of years of work. He is now close to achieving his great aim of building a whole skeleton. The fossils are carefully protected and placed in trunks according to category. Pieces of ulna, femur, carpus, metacarpus, phalanx. Pieces carefully chosen from animals of comparable size in order to reconstruct the Baluchitherium's original form. In 2 weeks of work, the team has collected several hundred kilos of bones. They must now be taken on a risky journey to the settlement of Dera Bukti. When Forster Cooper made his expedition in 1911, he lost one of the finest fossils this way. It simply couldn't survive the shocks and bumps of a journey by camel.
Bravo, hein? Bravo les gars, hein? Vraiment, franchement, un boulot dur.
So the bone and the plaster we made this morning, 100 years later, we have the same situation as what happened to Forster Cooper, even though we have more modern methods, apart from the camels, that is. It's in pieces, the bone. I fell off with the basket. You want to see the result? I fell off too, but that doesn't matter. That's what happens, and what happened to Forster Cooper 80 years ago. Fortunately, we have several other examples of that bone in better condition. But there we are, our lovely plaster from this morning, all in pieces. But these things happen.
Finish. Nene. Epogori gurk. Lello. Finish.
मस्त नवा शल्ले तरब लड़ो श्यामारा वरा ओ मन शल्लानो के मना बाजिर समोआ दातगजी ओ कर गजी लम्मी बाजिरा जंपा को बुना मस्त नवा शल्ले तरब लड़ो श्यामारा वरा ओ मन शल्लानो के मना बाजिर समोआ दातगजी
But exactly what kind of environment did Baluchitherium live in? And what other creatures shared it with him? In the course of examining other fossil sites from the same period, Welcomme discovered one particular area south of the Bukti country which turned out to hold a mine of information. The team of scientists now move on to this site to investigate further.
You have to be a little crazy to be scraping a hilltop like this 8,000 kilometers from home. There's a problem somewhere. Paleontologists have a problem with the passage of time. Some get religious, others end up mad. It's like what they say about meningitis. Either you die or you become an idiot. I've had meningitis. A spade would be nice. If you're not using both of the spades, can I have one?
Drawing on their different fields of expertise, the scientists managed to extract information from the tiniest pieces of fossil, gradually gathering clues about the Baluchitherium's natural habitat.
On n'a jamais eu un niveau aussi épais. Regarde, il va de là. Oh, bouge pas. Eh les gars. Petit calcanéo. Attends. Il y est. Complet.
Artiodactyle.
Just by scrutinizing this small area of sand, they're able to find and identify the bones of various creatures, including some mammals. But of course, all these fragments will have to be subjected to closer scrutiny with more sophisticated equipment. For the moment, the scientists try to gather all they can.
Les sacs qu'il y a là, je crois qu'on va les laver après. Parce que là, il y a du mammifère, par contre. Beaucoup. Allez, on y va. Et aujourd'hui, on a quand même ramassé...
Today we were collecting for an hour. We collected all this: artiodactyls, land mammals mixed with fish, sharks. These are all very interesting elements from the point of view of correlating age. We can compare this small-sized and medium-sized fauna with what we know from other parts of Asia and Europe and Africa. That gives us an idea about the fossil seam. In association with the Baluchitherium, it gives us certain information about its age, which is the first interesting point. If we only had the Baluchitherium, it would be harder to reconstruct its environment and the landscape it lived in. All these smaller animals make it possible for us to understand a little better if it was a real forest dweller or whether it lived near water, and the type of climate these animals lived in. We can piece together something of the world it inhabited.
The wildlife consists of small rodents as well as strange ruminants and carnivores unknown elsewhere in southern Asia. Indeed, during one sifting operation, the team made an extraordinary discovery: teeth belonging to primates. And yet the scientific community had tended to believe that no representatives of the order existed in Asia at that time. In order better to establish what this discovery implies, Welcomme has called on the assistance of Jean-Jacques Gégère, a specialist in Asian primates from Montpellier University.
Intéressant ça.
By continuing their patient and painstaking work, Welcomme and his colleagues managed to identify 7 different species of primate, confirming that they in fact had an extensive presence in Asia.
The interest of the Pali site for our research is considerable because it fills a gap in our knowledge of the history of mammals in Asia. And this gap represented more than 10 million years, from around 40 million years ago to around 25 million years ago. This gap is particularly significant in tracing one group, our own group, the group from which we are descended, which is to say the group of anthropoid primates.
So the information that the Pali site brings about this chapter in the history of life is of major importance in understanding our own origins. Our family of anthropoid primates may not, after all, be exclusively of African origin. Not only the apes of Asia, orangutans and gibbons, but also other African ape species, including man, could well have appeared in Asia. The Baluchitherium expedition is shedding a new light on the history of humanity itself. The team returned to Derabukti, where Welcomme has managed to establish a small laboratory. The range and diversity of the fossils they have recovered reinforces the hypothesis that many animal groups have an Asian origin: pigs, squirrels, rodents, rhinos, and even cetaceans.
20 years ago or 30 years ago, when we were trying to discover the origins of a group whose origins were then unknown, we would say it comes from Asia. It was the explanation miraculously given by people who wanted to go to Asia to check it out. But it's quite normal after all, because it's the biggest continent in terms of surface area and of climatic diversity. So it's normal that it should be the motherland of all groups, including our own.
But in any case, if you take the continents, there is Africa, with Fayoum. It's a very rich site, very rich. They've been excavating there for 100 years, and we've had just 1 year. Well, not even a year. In fact, we've had just 15 days on site. Hardly even that. And we've already come up with wonderful finds. It's a site which has to be explored over and over. You were saying the other day it would take 10 years. We've got proof here of contact with Africa and of the migration of major mammal groups. We have to find out in which direction they traveled. Based on previous thinking, it could have been one direction or the other. In my opinion, most of the groups originate in Asia and move to Africa rather than the opposite, which changes everything. Everything. It's not going to be easy to get the idea accepted, but it's a fact.
The animal which shakes up such well-established certainties is, for the moment, merely a collection of spare parts in a dozen metal boxes. But it will soon be brought back to life.
Men are proud and obstinate, don't you think? To be trying to do such a thing here, under these conditions, it's not possible. I have to admit that finding a flat space in this region is not easy. We're going to carry the bones up to a nice flat space and build a composite skeleton, or at least try to reconstruct a Baluchitherium with bones from several individuals. I think we've got a complete composite skeleton. We have to keep using the term composite because to say just complete implies the bones come from one individual. And we're going to attempt to reconstruct an image of the Baluchitherium which will enable us to sketch out its profile and get a better idea of what this fabulous animal's body looked like. But we're not there yet. We've got a ton of stuff to carry up and we're preparing the way. So we'll see. We'll have to drag the boxes. They're too heavy to lift.
So the scientists start marking out the area where they're going to set the skeleton and sort out the different pieces of their complex puzzle. Not without some difficulty.
Voilà. Comment ça se fait qu'il est de l'autre côté? Semblait bien. Voilà. Ça c'est juste. Bon. Très bien. Et là, attends. Pas si vite les gars, hein. Vous avez un bout de radius là?
During this time, the Bukti guards look on, patient and imperturbable.
Sachant que s'il a les pattes avant plus longues que les pattes arrière, il faudrait baisser un petit peu le niveau
du bassin, oui, c'est ce que je pensais. On y est déjà là.
What we've done is we've reconstructed the skeleton as we had tried to do before, except putting it the other way around. And the next stage is to try to complete this composite skeleton with everything we've been able to discover this year at Lundo, which is to say adding a large part of the carpals, a large part of the long bones of the lower limbs, some vertebrae which were missing, which we now have, and then for the hind legs, some long bones, some parts of long bones which were missing, and some bits of their extremities.
Voilà, voilà, très bien. Très bien. Très, très bien. On ne touche plus à rien.
The first draft of a colossus measuring 6 meters high at its shoulders and 8 meters long.
As soon as we've finished this stage of reconstructing the skeleton, obviously we're going to try to dress it, to give the animal an outline. So we'll draw the body around the limbs, imagining where the muscle masses were, of course, and the thorax and so on.
Tout ça basé évidemment sur la reconstitution du squelette.
I'd like to see what it looks like from above. All right?
Ouais, c'est pas mal.
Based on the dimensions of the first molar tooth, a biologist has found a formula for determining an animal's weight. Baluchitherium should have weighed about 20 tons, the weight of 3 very big elephants.
Peut-être rentrer un peu les doigts comme c'est fait là. De marquer un petit peu la différence entre les bouts des doigts.
At the Natural History Museum in France, the young paleontologist Pierre-Olivier Antoine, a rhinoceros specialist, has spent several weeks drawing the first full skeleton. Now Welcomme is going to discover what the results are.
What I've done is I've been working from the reconstruction, which is a bit distorted by the perspective, because I know you took the photos from a tower. You had some problems. So I've simply transformed it slightly, which is to say I looked at the rectangle as if it were a trapezium. And I've expanded it here by computer and straightened it up. I've straightened it out, and that's what you get.
Ah, yes, there you can see we made some mistakes. But of course it was difficult to get any distance from the skeleton. We couldn't stand back from it further with the tower. So you straightened there, the neck is short.
There are perhaps too many vertebrae. On rhinos of today, there are a variable number of vertebrae according to the species. On the other hand, there's something more exact, in the same spirit as the reconstruction of the skull. You have the hind limbs here, if we make room.
Yes, it doesn't matter how big your desk is, it's never big enough.
The forelimbs, and then the spinal column. And then here we have the sacra, the sacral vertebrae, and the head is a bit further over.
Is that in proportion?
Yes, it's all in proportion. Yes, the head's small, but here's one that's simpler.
Ah, you've done the whole thing.
And I've put points of inflection here, which correspond to all the points where there are articulations.
Which is obviously going to make it possible to animate.
To begin with, it should help the sculptor to respect the right proportions and to show how it might have been with the head raised or lowered, or to show it in a different position.
Sculptor Jean-Paul Réty has taken over the next step in reconstructing the Baluchitherium. He has spent some time working from Pierre Olivier's anatomical sketches, and now Pierre Olivier is about to discover the result.
Now we're going to step back a few million years in time. Time to reveal a few secrets.
Not bad.
Of course, here we can see something of a first step, based on the main proportions, loosely defining the pelvis, shoulders, musculature.
A long neck and a small head. There must be mechanical reasons for that too.
Yes, because if we think about these muscles here that make the head move, and seeing that they're attached very high up, it's true that
They form a lever that's practically 2 meters, 2 meters 50, with 1 meter 30 for the head. That means that above the shoulders, it's more than 3 meters.
since we don't see the ears here, I've prepared another one. For the moment, it's two-sided. I'm trying things out. Working from the skeleton, I'm looking to place the eye socket, the eyes, the eyelids, with the bony part we can see here.
With the cheek, maybe their eye might be a bit lower. It's likely to be like a rhino with eyes quite low down, imagining how it would be if it was symmetrical.
And here, are we right to put this little thing, this plume? It's fun, but is it plausible?
Most species of rhino today have this tuft, so we can imagine they had it too.
Because aesthetically, it lightens things up. It's quite fun, but we mustn't start inventing things which aren't plausible. Here we start to touch the bone, a bit higher perhaps. And there could be some folds, a bit more varied perhaps.
Yes, they wouldn't necessarily be very regular. If we model it on today's rhinos anyway, they wouldn't be.
It might be possible to bring the eye socket down a bit before anything else.
Because the modeling of the eyeball is good there.
It's possible. I'll do it like that, because I always try to feel the bone underneath and not just move forms around.
A bit lower still.
I'll give him a new eyelid, provisionally. There his vision's going to be a bit blurred for a moment. Ah, yes, indeed, indeed. That feels good to me. There's the little eye.
It's at the right height now.
It's a compact little eye. We can camouflage that to be going on with. It's a better place now, no doubt about it.
Born from clay, the Baluchitherium is now transformed by the animators into a series of equations. Computer graphics artists then attempt to breathe life into creation's dormant giant. Jerzy Koolhaar has the delicate task of acting as intermediary between the scientists and the computer artists.
Before doing an animation as such, we're supposed to do what is called skinning, which means the envelope that is stiff here will be able to fold as well. And that work is still in progress and isn't perfect for the moment. So after that, for the animation, it's been suggested that we base it on the way an elephant moves. So the first thing we did was look at tapes, and then we begin by what we call a walk cycle. We've basically got 2 ways of walking, and we're really keen to hear your comments. That one's closer to the elephant.
That's not going to work. That doesn't correspond at all to the rhino, so probably not to the architecture of the Baluchitherium either.
It probably wouldn't walk with the legs so far apart, would it?
In fact, I can give you a front view or a back view, but not at the right speed.
It doesn't matter, it's just for the spacing. The right one's better.
So we should forget the left one completely.
Rhinos are animals with 3 fingers. It's represented correctly, but with lateral fingers that are much shorter. The legs will then be thinner, and so will the feet, and that will correspond much more to reality. To our reality, in any case.
Obviously, the head is a bit small for a neck movement like that. It would be easier to understand with a heavier head, like an elephant's head. I think the rhinoceros runs with its head held stiffly.
Anyway, we don't really know, because this is the only rhino which has such a long neck.
It's hard to imagine it walking like a chicken, though. With the head going forward like that, it's a bit too much.
What we're trying to do to begin with is find a gait for him, as if he were moving in a herd, going to graze, for example. We've got the walk now, but then there's a question of speed.
That seems all right for speed. They're animals with a build and size where they don't need to go very fast.
That's why the elephant is a good comparison.
That's good. That's more like what we had imagined.
We're like children, discovering our baby.
Jean Loup Welcomme face to face with his creature, a peaceful giant whose life yet remains shrouded in mystery. At his village school, the Bukti warrior Kehar comes to tell the children the story of the Baluchitherium, the rhinoceros of their native land. A rhinoceros so huge it even made the mountains tremble.
मस्त नवा शल्ले तरब लड़ो से हमारा